And good evening, everyone. It's 7 minutes after 8 p.m. here in Warsaw, Poland, and thanks all for being here. I'm live today with Usama Dakdok and Odon LaFontaine, both of whom are very well known within the Christian apologetics and Islamic polemics community. And of course, Usama is legendary as a fantastic apologist and Christian, and Odon just released a new book which discusses the origins of Islam. And of course, Usama is here because he's also written a full Quran, just as Saint Murad has done, but he's taken a different perspective. And yeah, the title of today's talk is The Islamic Myths, the Quran and the True Origins of Islam. And we just discussed briefly, before I have my guests introduce themselves, an interesting perspective, because for Muslims, they don't always appreciate, they are often unable to consider the historical perspective. And so these arguments often fall flat because they just assume the Quran is true and that the narratives that were given are true. And of course, we have to approach them from within the sin. But we on the outside, we look at the standard Islamic narrative and we feel that it's false based on the evidence. So now you've got this clash when we realize that, as I learned from Usama a few weeks ago, we have to approach this from both perspectives. Having one perspective only is not sufficient, but there's value in both. And I think we can discuss that. So guys, thank you all for being here. We can make introductions. So Usama, let's start with you. Please introduce yourself and give us your thoughts, perspective, and what you hope to achieve today. You said,
Sure.
of course, evangelization is very important. And yeah, you're right. So please say hello.
Sure. My name is Usama Dakdok. I'm with the Straight Way of Grace Ministry, doing this ministry now for almost 24 years. I started 1 year before September 11, even though I tried to do it 10 years prior to that. But here in America, I don't think the American people realize we have a problem with Islam, because Islam to them was a wonderful, another religion with wonderful people who are helping America more than anybody else. And obviously, after September 11, that story changed. So I'm really excited to be here with Brother Odin, because I went through his book. I read maybe half of it. I cannot say I really get half, maybe a little bit less than half. But man, oh man, I need a couple of weeks to understand and go in depth in his writing, because he's like above my head here. I'm a guy who maybe I have a master's degree in mythology, but that book is written for so sharp people. Somebody have to be real smart to dig in and literally so many of the words in English. I told my wonderful sister Christy Johnson, she's my producer with my Saturday night show, and she co-hosts with me in many programs as well. And I said, "What does this word mean?" "Oh, you some let me think." And she took her like a minute or two. I said, "Wait a minute. You're an American speaking English. You don't understand these words." But it is a very powerful book, very deep, full thought. It is I mean, maybe in the future, when Brother Odin can write another book, make it easy for humble people like me, where English is their third language. But anyway, God is good. God is good, and I'm glad to be here today. What I'm hoping to accomplish, as you said, Brother Lloyd, is attack the problem with Muslims believe in a lie from any ways, from all the ways, not just from the historical. Because I guarantee you, Brother Odin is going to do a great job today to show you from history this is not true. What you have been believing, what you have heard, and what you trust all the years of your life, you and your ancestors for the last 1400 plus years, it's a lie. Now, for some people who are skeptics, don't believe in anything he wrote in his book, you just made it up. We got the truth. It's here. It's in the Quran. We know for sure everything is true. I will come up here and they say, "Excuse me, you really believe what is written in these pages is true?" You can't even understand it. And if you can understand it, according to Muslim scholar, it is a myth. It's a comedy. It is a joke. And boy, oh boy, we need a good 15, 20 hours today to be able to cover some of these materials. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for that. Odon.
Well, thank you, Sama, for your compliments. As you might have understood from my thick accent, I'm French, and I don't speak and write such a good English as you describe it. I did my best with the book. I think it's understandable, but it's not that high level English. I think I wanted it to be understandable for non-native speakers. and from what I get from the readers, it's the case. It's understandable. It works very, very well. I have a lots of readers. Since I have the PDF version of the book is free, available on our website. I have many readers from all over the world, and I'm very happy to see that finally all the researches I wanted to publicize are starting to spread and to influence Muslims, ex-Muslims, the scholars and researchers and academia community. It's just the beginning. I think the book is and the theory, the hypothesis I put forth are groundbreaking, and they might really help to understand the deep nature of Islam and how to address Muslims. And this would be nice to discuss this this evening with you two. And
maybe I'm trying to say is the material you have is so rich, it's so deep. It needs somebody to be a scholar to come up to get into the depths of your writing, not just the language. Maybe I have some problem with some English words, but your level of teaching is really great, above my head. But God is.
I'm working on a synthesis, a very short version of the book, something like 5 to 8 pages, just to explain the main points in a very simple way. I've done the same in French previously, and this worked very well. You'll see.
Okay. I have 2 comments, and I'll leave it open to the 2 of you to discuss again. Gabriel Said Reynolds wrote a series of tweets, perhaps even today, because I read them, and he said the Bible has come under lots of critical attack for over a century, and it's typically, even in Western colleges and universities, it is written about in a disparaging manner. It is written about in a very aggressive manner, very clever arguments to undermine it. He said, by contrast, within academia, and this is Gabriel Said Reynolds, the very well-known Islamic scholar, scholar of Islam, rather, and he says, but the Quran, by contrast, is praised. No one wants to speak about it negatively. Everyone writes about it in a very apologetic, in a very forgiving manner, and in a very, they give it high praise. They call it poetry. He put these statements out there, and then the comments were, of course, no. The Quran is beautiful because it's beautiful, and the Quran is so beautiful. That's why people say beautiful things. And of course, your thoughts on that. And then also one other comment, Odon, perhaps you can tell us again what you said just before we began. You said Muslims are inoculated against historical evidence, facts, history, whereas they really should be approached from within their perspective, which Usama does as well, from within the standard narrative and from within the context of the Quran. So why do we do the historical narrative? So on these 2 points, I'll leave it over to you, Odon, to begin, and then Usama, you guys can have that discussion.
About the way the Quran is seen in
academia versus the Bible. The Bible is treated very aggressively, and the Quran is treated with kid gloves.
Yeah. I think it pertains to the whole enlightenment and modernistic movement, which try to put Christianity aside and develop a new approach based only on science and reason. In the 19th century, many Orientalists praised the Quran because it was non-Christian. They did the same with Buddhism. They presented Buddhism in the West in a very appealing way, because it was a sort of substitute, something to replace the Christian faith. It's a bit of the same with the Quran. I've wrote a book in French about this called La laïcité, mère porteuse de l'islam. Islam, secularism as the surrogate mother of Islam, and it explores the relationships between Western ideologies and Islam. But this is something very, very deep and strong in our societies, even in the US or in the so-called Christian societies. There is a very deep anti-Christian stance, and Islam is seen as a good thing because it is not Christian and anti-Christian. So that's the thing. As for the other question, it was about
why the historical method when Muslims are, immune to that.
It's my experience, actually. I've been engaging Islam since 14 or 15 years. No, not 14 or 15 years, but I've published the first edition, the first French edition of my book 11 years ago, or 10 years ago. And since then, I have been confronted with critics from Muslims, and I've discussed with thousands of Muslims on the social medias, and also in debates in the streets. And what I've come to realize is that most of them are impervious to criticism, any kind of criticism, but especially historical criticism, because in order to understand historical criticism, you have to use reason, a lot of reason. You have to delve into hypotheses, logic. You have to look at ancient sources and make analysis and so on. And because of this, you need to use your reason and to have some logic. And I've come to understand that Islam has hijacked the reason of Muslims. They cannot reason in a logical way because of Islam. Because there is something in Islam, it's an ideology that is very strong and that hijacks reason, in the sense of you see, usually when you abide by reason, you examine reality, you examine the facts, you develop a critical analysis of the reality of the facts, you put forth hypotheses to explain reality, and you come to a conclusion. With Islam, and it is the same with every other ideology, with Islam, you already have the conclusion. You already have the conclusion that Islam is a solution to every problem in the world. Islam is the best thing that has ever happened to mankind. So this is your conclusion. And what you do is you don't consider reality for what it is. You consider it through the prism of this conclusion. You distort reality so that it will fit the conclusion that Islam is the solution, Islam is the best thing, and everything that does not fit this fantasy, this surreality, cannot be taken into account. And so for most Muslims, they cannot reason with something, they cannot take into account something that does not fit the Islamic narrative, that does not fit their own views, because it would then endanger Islam within them. And there is an unconscious mechanism, a very strong psychological mechanism. They consider themselves as persons because they are Muslims. They do not consider themselves as people, as persons, as the only way they see themselves as such is because of their Muslimhood, because they are Muslims.
So it's their
identity. And if you endanger Islam, if you put forth arguments, critics that might endanger Islam within them, they feel endangered, and they have a sort of self-defense mechanism on an unconscious level. They cannot cope with something that would destroy what they think they are, what they think their human nature is. But they are wrong. Their human nature is not Islamic. Their human nature is only human, the same as every other people. There is no Islamic nature.
Right.
And that's the thing with Muslims. Because of this, it's very, very difficult to argue and to discuss facts and to engage them and to have them use their own reason. But they can do it. They can do it. For this, they need a sort of shock treatment. But this is maybe we should discuss this a bit later.
All right, Usama.
All right. It's a very good question. I love it. The Lord just gave me some thought as I was listening, Brother Odin. First of all, Christianity from the beginning, it did not start by any power or source or force by the sword as we have seen in Islam. If we see how Islam started and how Christianity started, it's the opposite. Because Christians were persecuted, Christianity grew. Because Islam was persecuting others, Islam grew. Therefore, throughout the history of Christianity, we have seen great criticism of the Christian belief. As a matter of fact, we have something in Christianity is called freedom. You have the freedom to speak against or to share what's in your heart about whatever there. And believe it or not, the devil used some of the what they call Christian theologians. I call them liberal Christian theologians. They're not Christians. They have nothing to do with Christianity. A great example of that is a high and low criticism of the German. I got 210 years ago or so, I can't even remember the date, when the German liberal theologian critiqued the Bible, mocked the Bible, made fun of the Bible, and they have a point. Many of the things written in the Bible, it did not make any sense. I can say that. But we as a Christians stuck with the Bible, holding to the Bible, as we continue to dig into the earth. That's what we call archaeological work. People went there and started searching for this city, for that piece of land, for this information. And behold, all these things start popping up. I got so many of my friends, that's what they do. They actually go to Israel to do one thing, dig in the ground, and found evidence for the truth of the Bible. Many of the discoveries, as a matter of fact, we can say all the discoveries of the archaeologists came to support the Bible and made these, what we call liberal theologians, look fool. Some of the things they make fun of us because it did not make any sense 200 years ago. As a matter of fact, 100 years ago. As a matter of fact, 50 years ago. Imagine with me, when you go to the Bible and you read a prophecy about something that's going to happen in the future, two guys are going to be so powerful and they're going to be killed. And their body will be laid in the streets of Jerusalem for 3.5 days. And the whole world will watch them. The whole world will see them. You can tell this to your great-grandpa and he will laugh at you. I'm not kidding you. So when these high-low criticism, the liberal theologian come up with this idea to mock the Bible, they have a point. But today, here I am with my dear brother Lloyd and Odin, 3 different countries around the world, and literally we can watch on our phone. You don't even need a computer. In my phone, I can see what's happening in Jerusalem right now. So obviously, the technology which was not available causes people to doubt some of the things in the Bible. Now with the technology, we know for sure the Bible is true. The biggest difference between criticism of Islam and criticism of Christianity is that people around the world can mock the Bible and nothing will happen. Nothing will happen to them. They are wonderfully respected and loved by everybody who does not believe in the Bible, who does not believe in the God of the Christian faith. But you try that with the Muslims. Just try it. See what's going to happen. We saw a man, a professor in California, 19 years ago, he actually wrote the word Jesus on a piece of paper, just a piece of paper, okay? He put the word Jesus on it, and he put it on the ground, and he stepped on it with his shoes, and he mocked it. One Mormon, imagine with me, a Mormon man, not a Baptist, but a Mormon, not a conservative Christian, he spoke against it. I said at the time, it's very easy. Why not we challenge that just to put the word Muhammad on the same piece of paper and put it on the ground and step on it with your foot. Guess what? It will be stapled in his chest with a knife. That is how Muslim reacted. So obviously, the whole world cannot have any problem to critique Christianity, mock the Bible. That's okay. You cannot do that with Islam. The only reason why in the last 20 years we start now to speak about Islam is because we got our protection, the internet, the technology. I can do whatever I want to say about Islam from my own office here, from my own studio here. Hopefully and prayerfully that there are plenty of Christian people who are praying for me that the Lord will continue to protect me, that I will not be killed by the hands of the Muslims. And because we do not fear those who kill the flesh, we'll continue to do that. And we're not here to make fun of Muhammad or to mock Islam. We're here to teach the truth for those who have ears and who are willing to hear the truth. Only the truth will set them free.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you very much. So on the topic that we're discussing today, which is the Quran and the origins of Islam, even the origins of the Quran, and just around that topic, because you guys have similar yet differing perspectives, you come from different directions, but I mean the goal here seems to be the same: one, to uncover the truth; two, to reveal the truth to people who need to hear it, to Muslims especially. Also to those of us who are involved within this sphere of apologetics or polemics, but also we want to be able to show them truth, and as you say, Osama, bring them to Christ. You want to evangelize, because it's not, you can't just knock the support out from under them. You've got to give them something to land on. Would you agree with that, Odon, as well, and Osama?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, so Odin, you wrote this very, very good book. I mean, this very interesting book that I was privileged to proofread, and I agreed with much of what was said. It made very logical sense. Now, of course, in some ways, we have to make certain assumptions. We have to speculate to some degree, as long as that's based on reasonable evidence and on logical trains of thought, right? So we can't necessarily prove everything, but we can reach certain degrees of certainty if things hang together coherently. So, but from your perspective, and then, well, what are some of the common misconceptions about the origins of the Quran? Some of the issues around the Standard Islamic Narrative, right? That are common misconceptions that Muslims hold, or even non-Muslims hold, and how do these beliefs differ from the historical evidence?
The main misconception is that the Quran comes from God, of course. But we cannot engage this misconception front on. It's because it is the Islamic faith, but there is a sort of another way to engage it. It's the same misconception, is that the Quran would come from a single author, who would be God or Muhammad. And it's very easy to look at the Quran and notice that there are contradictions, that there are passages that were rewritten, that there are multiple authors. For example, in the Quran, you will find that God can forgive every sin. And in other passages, you will find that there are some sins that God will never forgive. So it's a blatant evidence that there were different minds, different people, different authors that made the Quran, that it cannot come from a single source, even Muhammad himself or God. And this is this misconception of the Quran being a single book, a homogeneous book given by a single author, is very easy to debunk, because there is so much evidence in the text for it. I think, Usama, you have worked years on this topic. You will get my point.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Here's a big difference between the writings of the Bible and the writing of the Quran. The Quran, as Muslims claim, It is given by Allah through angel Jibreel to Muhammad. Easy 3 steps. Muhammad recited the verses to his people who memorized it, who wrote it on pieces of different fabric, if it's the bones, animal skin, palm leaf, whatever. They wrote it, and somehow it was collected later by Omar, Osman, who united to one book, and we all know the story. Here's a problem. As I was telling you, Brother Lloyd, before the show today, it is very difficult. It's very hard for me. I'm putting myself in the Muslim mindset that you grew up all your life believing in a lie. That lie was told often enough, and Muslim scholars kept repeating it, and every Muslim believed it. We have one Holy Quran, one pure Arabic. Not one word change. I love it how the educated Muslims in the West mocks the Bible when you compare the Quran. Look at the Bible. You got King James, you got NIV, you got American Standard, and you got the New King James, and you got the preserved this and the fixed that. And oh my word, we only have one Quran, Holy Quran, pure Arabic Quran. They taught me that when I was in Egypt, until the age of 23. And I grew up to believe that is the truth as they believe it. I never believed in the Quran to be the word of God. I know for a fact it's not. But that's what the Muslim believe. Then as I continue to grow in my understanding, in my knowledge, in my facts, in the historical facts which we see in the Quran, surprise, surprise. It's not one Quran. It's 40 plus. That's how much we know. The other Qurans have been burned, have been destroyed, and we will never find them again. I guarantee you, if we know every Quran was written there and people believed in it in some period of time, we may have hundreds of Quran. Who knows? When the Quran is burned, it's burned. So I say here. So, but that is their belief. One Quran given to one angel, given to Muhammad. Have Muslims studied that Quran? Have Muslims investigated that Quran? As Brother Odin said, you see not one passage, but almost every passage in the Quran have a contradictory message somewhere else. That is exactly what is the reality of Islam. I mean, think about it. The story is taken from the Bible or from other sources, as we know for a fact, and you see the repeated story in the Quran, and every time Muhammad repeats the story, give us different information.
Different.
So how can this be one Allah, one Jibreel, one Muhammad? And
you're right. I think he tells the Moses story like 7 times.
Brother, there are some passages where the statement of Pharaoh in one chapter of the Quran, actually it is the statement of Moses, another chapter of the Quran. So what Pharaoh said is actually what Moses said. What Allah said is actually what Jibreel said. What Muhammad, I mean, literally, it is the amount. I wrote 2-volume books, 700 plus pages, and my editors remove 150 pages out. They say, oh, it's not important. Okay, it's not important, removes it. As a matter of fact, what they remove out of these 2-volume books, exposing the truth about the Quran, the revelation of error, what the editors remove is enough to cause any person with logic or common sense to disbelieve in Islam. This is a story of my life. Here's the volume. That is volume 1 of 2. Volume 1 of 2, exposing the truth about the Quran. So, how can the Quran be the perfect word of Allah as Muslim claim? When I dig into it, what I have in my hand, what they believe in, it's not. It's not. So,
we don't only need the historical evidence. We can actually go to the primary source itself. So just as a question, then, I mean, you both are experts in your fields, and Osama, obviously, you have very deep roots coming from this Islamic country, speaking the language, knowing the words and their meanings and so on, in a way that we don't. What is your view in terms of do we still need to pursue the historical method? I mean, I don't speak Arabic. I would struggle, right? So therefore, I need to use a different approach. So how do we reconcile these? How do we work together with these?
It is the problem. The historic view, which is that wonderful book Brother Odin wrote, is very important for the imams, for the people who know Islam, for those who are calling themselves scholars and the defender and the apologetics Muslim believers. Okay, But the problem is 87% of the Muslims have never even read the Quran. As a matter of fact, in my own personal experience, talking to hundreds of Muslims who left Islam, reason number one why Muslims leave Islam, and are you ready? Reason number one, because they read the Quran. Not with the glasses of Islam. You see, I got these glasses here for a purpose. These glasses is you use when you have eclipse. So when you have eclipse, they told you do not look at the sun with your eyes. You're going to burn your eyes. You put this glass and you know what I'm seeing right now? I'm seeing nothing. Literally nothing. These are the glasses which Muslims wear to read the Quran. Okay? If they read in the Quran with these glasses, nothing wrong with the Quran. But the people who just use their naked eye to read the Quran, to figure out what's the Quran, there's a problem. The problem is the Quran is a problem. The Quran is a destruction of Islam. Reason number two why Muslims leave Islam is because they learn about Muhammad. Muhammad is this great king who is wearing this huge fancy clothes which made out of material. No one can see it except the one who made the clothes. Remember the naked king story? And they were working, and we need $10,000 more. Your honesty, your honor. We need more material. And he go and look, and they're working. They're fixing the clothes, and then the day come, and the king wears that fancy clothes which cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And he walk in the street, and a little boy or a little girl, everybody clap hands. Great, it's a king. Great, it's a king. Wow. Little boy or a little girl, I do not know who did it in the story. He said, what? The king is naked. That is how we can get rid of, destroy Islam. So the historical approach is very important for the educated one, the one who think, oh, they know for sure, without doubt. They have the evidence. One Quran. No, it's not. Perfect Quran. No, it's not. Here is the history of your Quran. We destroy it. But for the simple people, I believe, who are, they never really know, they don't know too much about Islam or the Quran or Muhammad. The simple approach, let's look at your Quran. Let's read what's in the Quran. Here's what Allah said. And by the way, you know what? How many times I did this, Brother Lloyd? I get two Muslim people, and I give them two separate chapters of the same story, and I ask a simple question. A simple question. You tell me what happened here, and you tell me what happened there. Same story. Noah, Moses, Abraham, David, Jesus, whatever. And then look at the answer. They both write by their own hand the opposite answer. I said, that is a problem of your Quran. Allah said A, Allah said Z. Which one is the right one? And I mean, anyway, we can use it to minister to the lost Muslim to lead them out of that cult. It will work. And the Lord can use either one of us. Yes, sir.
Very powerful. Thank you. Odon, something I got from this is what Osama said. I mean, fantastic perspective is that academics are interested in academic things, because I've had many people tell me, well, I'm not interested in theology. But if you can approach them from a historical, factual, critical perspective, that is something that is meat for them. So do you think that that's value there as well? Because academics are the ones who are polishing this, shall we say, turd, the ones who are whitewashing Islam and are, treating it with kid gloves.
Polishing the third. Yeah. No, I didn't know the expression, but it is colorful. No, that's an issue. Most academics don't want to delve into theology or even the basic matters of religion. For them, it's a sort of black box because they are non-religious people, and it's the same as magic or voodoo for them. What Christians do in their churches, what Muslim believes, is all nonsense. And so, because of this, they don't get the gist of Islam. Most of them don't understand what Islam is about. Islam is much more than believing in God and Muhammad and that the Quran is God's word. Islam is the idea that Muslims are the chosen one, that God has chosen them to establish a sort of perfect kingdom on earth. It is the very same idea we find in communism, for example, but it is also the very same idea that drives our society. it is the very same idea that also drives most of those scholars in academia. They think that science will achieve a sort of perfect society. Most of them think this way because this is the way
communism, scientific communism made that claim, and they invented gulags and mass murder on a scale history hasn't known.
Yeah, but if you put yourself in the perspective of a communist or the perspective of a progressist, someone who is driven by progressive ideologies, the people in the Gulag did not count. The people we think as heretics do not count. They are not people. They are insects. They are pests. They ought to be. They can be tolerated, but in the end, they will be eliminated. And that's the thing with the historical approach. When you look into early Islam and the making of Islam, you understand that at the beginning there was no Quran, there was no prophet of Islam. All these things were fabricated along the centuries. The concept of the prophet of Islam, the concept of God giving a revelation in the form of a book, it did not exist in the 7th century. But the idea of Islam, the idea that God has chosen a specific people to fulfill a sort of grand project on earth, already existed. And this is the idea we have to engage. We can engage the Quran, we can engage Islam on Islamic matters, but it is much more direct to engage Islam on its core belief. And its core belief is not about God being one God or Muhammad being his prophet. Its core belief is the idea that God has chosen a community to sort of be his deputies on earth.
His vice regents, as they
between
term
right
it.
and wrong in his name, and to establish a perfect kingdom by Islamicizing the world.
Yeah.
Right. You want to say something, Usama?
Yeah.
You realize that the Quran is not the basis of Islam. The idea I just spoke about is the basis of Islam, and the Quran is only a sort of a byproduct of Islam.
Yeah.
Islam produced the Quran to yes.
Perhaps I can add something there, and then I'll hand it over to Usama, who wants to add something. So just hold that thought for one moment, please, Usama.
Sure.
Something that I haven't yet spoken of on my channel at any length, because I discovered this, and if you look at the philosophical basis of Islam, because there are certain scholars who are very critical in the evolution of Islamic philosophy, but also within the Sharia. And these scholars had access to what they thought was Plato's philosophy. And in some cases, these were fake Platonic documents, or they were written, these were paraphrases of Plato, or these were Neoplatonic, but not necessarily Plato. But one of the ideas of Islam is based on Plato's Politeia, where Plato says, look, if you have a little town and you have the perfect law in that town and everyone is moral and everyone's good, it doesn't matter because the rest of the world is still corrupt. You must spread that law, those rules across the whole world. Then you can have a perfect world. And this idea coming from Plato's politics of a totalitarian state that imposes these laws actually made its way into Islamic philosophy and became the philosophy underlying the construction of the caliphate. They stole it from pagan Greek philosophy. And this is something that I actually want to dive into in the future. And so the ideas come from a corruption, or maybe an accurate application of or an accurate understanding of Plato's ideas, which are also, oddly enough, partly or part and parcel of communism. So these are just similar paths, slightly divergent applications, and the one is more wrapped in theology. Over to you, Usama.
Well, what you're saying is true, because there's nothing originated in Islam came from Muhammad. He got everything from somewhere else. Nothing. As a matter of fact, in my study for my radio broadcast, which I do for VCY, I went through, it's called Commentaries on the Quran. We have done so far 156 radio broadcasts We're in chapter 16. And I think by the time we finish, maybe I will be in my 80s. I'll be real old. But anyway, we'll see what's going to happen there. But in chapter 16, Muhammad did not get anything from the Bible except verse 26, where it's a verse, ambiguous verse. Nobody knows what Allah is talking about. And the scholars of Islam take it to be, hey, that's the Tower of Babel. Okay, because the roof fall on top of their heads. Yes, indeed, it must be the Tower of Babel, because the roof did not fall in the Tower of Babel on the heads of those who built it anyway. But they got everything wrong. But nothing in the Quran is originated. When you go to Quran chapter 16, where he did not copy from somewhere else, it's an empty chapter. It is a ridiculous chapter. But here's what I was going to share earlier. Yes, in Islam, Allah actually chose the Arab people, as Brother Odin said a minute ago, to accomplish his goal for the whole world. But and it's clear. If you read the Quran, Allah said in the Quran that Allah favors them above the world by being they are the best nation. Okay, but if you study the Quran a little bit carefully, closely, you find that also the opposite message, which is a contradiction, which teaches, well, wait a minute, Allah favors the Jew in the Quran above the world. See, the repeat kissing up or making feel good about themselves to lead people to believe in that new movement or that new ideology or the new cult, it does not work with any person who have logic or common sense. The Christians are okay. The Sabians are okay. The Jews are okay. The Muslims are okay. Even idol worshippers, those who worship Allah wal Uzza wal Manat, are okay. Everybody is okay. Adam is the first Muslim. Abraham is the first Muslim. Muhammad is the first Muslim. Jesus is the first Muslim. I mean, you can't do
Khadija is
that.
the first Muslim too.
Yeah, but see what I'm saying is, if you're reading one verse by itself, yes, Arab are the noble people. Al-Tabari speak highly of them. They are the helpers of Allah. I say, what? Arab are the helpers of Allah? Yes. And I always say, if Arab are the helpers of Allah, well, you know what? Arab, you need to search for another God. I don't need a God who need my help. I needed his help every minute, every hour of my life. So you got it backwards. But in the same time, you go somewhere else in the Quran and find, wait a minute, the Jews are also Allah's favorite people, whom Allah cursed in the Quran. Hello? How can this be right and this is right? They cannot be both right. So anyway, that's my simple thought about
Very
what
interesting.
earlier. Sure.
Yeah. Before we go further, guys, this is Amazon.com, and these are Osama's books. Thank you very much, Lil Lomain, for posting the link. Thank you very much. And I also will post I'll show later the link to Odon's book, The Great Secret of Islam. But look that up, The Great Secret of Islam, and you'll find it as well. A free copy of his book, or you can get it on Amazon as well. So these are Osama's books here. So please do support them both. They both do fantastic work, and they've got very different perspectives. But at the end of the day, it's like one guy's coming from the sea to a place and the other guy's coming over land. They see different things, they describe different things, but they're both going to the same place. So yeah, thanks for that, Lil Man, for putting this up, and I'll do Odon's link in a little while. I just want to show something that actually, let me add to stage again. Let me do this. This is the Bridges Quran translation. You can see this is it's in my Google archive, so please check the links to my Google archive. I've got over 2,000, nearly 2,500 references in it available to you. This is the Bridges translation of the 10 Qira'at of the Noble Quran. Now remember, there were first there was 7, there were 10, and now there's 14 Qira'at, which are 14 original versions or variations of the Quran. Of those 14 that are now accepted, because in the first couple of 100 years there were 7, and then eventually 300 years later there were 10, and a couple 100 years later someone added 4 more, and so then there were 14 versions of the Quran, and each of those versions has 2 transmitters, or riwayah. And of course, what you have now is you've got 14 versions of the Quran, and you've got 2 transmitters of each of these main versions, leaving you with 42 versions of the Quran. And if you look at the Hafs version of the Quran, Hafs has 4 different versions of his own transmission. Which one is the correct one of the Hafs transmission? So there's more than 42, but we know we're just saying 42 because there are 42 official versions. So and when you look through this, you will find contradictions in the Qira'at, in these supposedly canonical versions. Like the one verse will say, God said to him, and then in the other one, God said to her, or they blocked others from traveling on the road, or others blocked them from traveling on the road. Now, which is it? They beat others up. They were beaten up by other people. You literally have these contradictions in these Qurans, and these are supposedly the official versions. Just your thoughts on that, Usama, and Odon.
Sure. It's the idea of one perfect Quran in the Arabic language is a comedy. It's a joke. One time I have a debate with a Muslim imam from Egypt and another imam from Morocco, and they were just trying to sugarcoat Islam with the setting of some Americans were there, and they said, we have one pure Quran. I said, no, you're not. He said, yes, we are. He said, we're not. I said, is touching a woman equal to having sex with her? And they immediately want to change the subject on the spot. I said, no. You start something, let me expose it to you. Can you grab your Quran imam from the Moroccan country? And here is my Egyptian imam read me from the Quran. In lamastum nisa or in lamastum nisa. If you touch the woman or if you have sex with a woman. You know the difference between a man. Imagine a lady go to the court and say, that man touched me. Or that man have sex with me. Is the same?
No, of course not.
Just to give you an example. We're talking about thousands of words like that all over the Quran. And by the way, for a guy like me, 10 years ago, when I read the Quran, I did not see the difference. Because it is in the vowels. It is in the small dash, look like a one in the English language, la mastum or la mastum without the dash. If you take the dash out, you change the word. Imagine with me, the entire Quran in the first 150 years was written without vowels, without dot. Brother, from 4 letters I put next to each other, I can create almost 40 words. Where I put the dot, where I put the vowels, above, below, a, e, u, a, or sin. I mean, it is, if you don't know Arabic, I can make out of a page in the Quran 10,000 pages. I'm not kidding you. I can literally give me 1 page of the Quran, remove the dot, remove the vowels, and I will make 10,000 pages out of that page. It's a miracle that Muslim will tell me that we have one Quran. It's a joke. It's a comedy.
It's actually, correctly speaking, and I got this from Chris at Speaker's Corner. It is the Qurans. It is not one Quran. It is the Qurans. There's a Bible, but they are the Qurans. It's really because it's so many different versions. These are different versions.
Brother Lloyd, the Muslim in the West are so smart. They tell the American people, you got all these English Bibles, but we have one Quran. When in reality, we got 32 Quran in English. We're talking about translations of the Bible or many Bibles. And I hate to say that some people actually speak not wisely or with sincere heart about we have the original Bibles. No, my dear friends, we do not have the original Bibles. The original Bible was used, was deteriorated, and we made a copy of the copies. Now, the copies we have of the Bible go back almost to the 1st century, not 200 years later. And these are the copy was made of the original. The consistencies of the teaching of this Bible, it is 99.5. Wait a minute, it's not 100%. No, it is not 100%. And if we have time in the future, I may have my Codex B. I have a Codex B, a Bible, go back to literally the original 300 years before Muhammad, with a gleam in his father's eye. That is a Greek Bible. And you see why we have problems with some of the early manuscripts of the Bible. It's not a problem. It is alteration of names. So John James or James John, Peter Safa or Safa Peter. You see what I'm saying? Which you put Usama Dakdok or Dakdok Usama. Spelling of words, numbers in the Old Testament. None of it will touch or even get any close to the doctrine and our belief in the Christian 66 books of the Bible. That's not the Quran. The Quran, every page, I can make hundreds of pages out of it. Depend on where I'm going to put my dot, where I put my vowels, and how I'm going to read these words. That's why in Muhammad days, there were 7 Qurans as we read in the Hadith, which is Sahih, okay, correct Hadith, where Muhammad said 2 angels came to him and they asked him to recite the Quran was one form, another form, 7 different forms. And Al-Tabari told us that Abu Ja'far said that All these forms are good as long as you don't change a verse from a blessing on a curse or vice versa. I mean, literally, Omar was about to kill a man in a mosque because he read the verse of the Quran in a different wording. And that's why we got to that mess. And I believe the reason is very simple. Muhammad used to make up his Quran if there was Muhammad, if there was Quran, and he never write anything down. And 3-4 weeks later, he reads the same chapter to somebody else. Another couple months, he reads the same chapter to somebody else. And when these guys got together, found that Muhammad say different words between this guy and this guy and this guy. Of course, when Muhammad was alive, it's not an easy to critique Islam. Off with your head, okay? So now people found out different reading for the same chapters, for the same verses, is because the two angels told Muhammad to recite the Quran in different format or different wording, and all of them are good. Do that today. Do that today. When I read the Quran in the Arabic language and I read a word in different pronunciation, خلقتم خلقتم. Oh my world, the whole world is over. Usama is not a scholar. He cannot talk about Islam. He said خلقتم when the word actually said خلقتم. Is it different? He's not qualified. Excuse me, you stupid Muslim. Throw all your Quran in a garbage can because they're all written the same ways. Different recitation for the same words. MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Hold on, a word for you before I move on to my next point.
The thing about the unicity of the Quran, it is a sort of white goose chase, a claim that cannot be grounded or justified because Muslims have never done a critical edition of the Quran. They have never worked on
Isn't the
early
1924 edition technically the critical edition? Because it is the first edition of the Quran that is officially approved by a major authority.
Made in my home country, Egypt. Yeah.
When I'm talking about a critical edition, I'm talking about in a bit what Nestlé Leyland did for the Greek manuscripts. Only the Greek manuscript, because they did a partial job on the Bible. They only worked on the Greek manuscript. And there are many other languages, mainly Aramaic, which should be taken into account when one studies the Bible. But let's go back to the Quran. There is no critical edition of the Quran. A critical edition is an edition which features all the different manuscripts, the most ancient manuscript, the variants, and this is what we have in the Nestlé Leyland or Lalande edition of the Bible for the Greek manuscript. There is no such thing with the Quran, and without such a thing, there cannot be any claim about the unicity of the Quran. And besides, the experts, the scholars who are working on very early manuscript, they have found discrepancies, they have found variants, they have found palimpsests, which tell us that there was no unique version of the Quran at the beginning. There was a sort of core. Mm-hmm.
Even the idea that the verses of the Quran are tawatir, that only dates to what, the 13th, 14th century. I mean, that's very late, 1400s, 1500s. That idea was established very late.
But I hate to stop you guys for a minute here. When you give me these names of all these people to come up with so and so, her so and so, her so and so, many of these people don't even know that they ever existed. It's not because I'm going to give you a list of a 50 name to make you feel like, wow, this must be a strong source. If these people never existed, what difference does it make? You might as well just say Muhammad said without any name.
Yeah, which prophet did Allah reveal the diacritical marks to?
For example,
yeah, good luck with
if you look at François Desroches' works on the Codex Parisino-Petropolitanus, which is a manuscript collection here in Paris, he found out that there were several copyists who worked on the manuscripts. They were recopying the Quran. So there were different copyists, and these different copyists had a different way of putting the diacritical marks and the vowel marks and so on. It is for him evidence that those copyists did not know what they were copying. Should they have known the Quran by heart, they would have used the same diacritical mark for the same words. But since there are discrepancies, it shows that they didn't know the text. They didn't know what they were copying. They were blindly copying a text they did not understand. And this is the reason why they put their own arbitrary marks on the text without knowing what it meant. It's something very, very strong, because the codex, this manuscript collection, so the Parisino Petropolitanus, is not that ancient. It's from the end of the 7th century, and most probably after. I think it dates from after Abdul Malik's reign. So in the 8th century. It is already a well-made text. When you look at the calligraphy, the way it is written, it is much more elaborated than the Sana manuscript, for example. Much more elaborated, much more beautiful in a way. And even at this stage, even in the 8th century, they didn't know what it meant. And this is also an argument, evidence that helps us to understand this Qiraat issue. Why are there so many Qurans, and how come the Muslims have invented this story of the Qiraat? It's because I think there was a point in history, maybe in the 9th or 10th, I don't know, maybe even after, in the 13th century, maybe, they came to realize that they had different versions of the Quran, and they could not, and so they had to make an explanation for it. Lloyd, you remember what I explained in the presentation about the fabrication of the narrative? When the Islamic scholar come across a discrepancy, an incoherence, they fabricate story to they invent something to solve the discrepancy or the incoherence. So they invented the idea, they invented the story that Muhammad gave the revelation in different qira'ats. So because at the time when they first invented the story, there were, I don't know, 5 qira'ats. There were 5 different versions. So they invented that there were 5 different versions given by Muhammad. And thereafter, there was 10 or 14. And they invented the Aruf stories and so on. And this is their way of explaining what they cannot explain otherwise within the frame of the Islamic narrative.
Yeah, the variations they have to explain. I mean, we know at least 42. It's clearly more, but there were hundreds of versions of the Qurans. Yeah, just to answer Nicodemus, no universities, oddly enough, although I do believe that people are more open to discussing issues with Islam, because people are now starting to, and I think on a political spectrum, shifting towards nationalism, shifting right, and wanting to reestablish Western Christian culture, and they are more open to discussing the issues they're experiencing with Islam and with the issues that Muslims bring. So I think that maybe universities are not there yet, but also when you see October 7th, I think more and more people are open to that. Academia, I think, discusses issues in the Quran. Of course, they never come to the conclusions that you want them to, but they put the facts together and then just fail to come to a conclusion. But I think things are changing. Guys, what do you think of my comment? Just my brief answer to that.
But you see, Lloyd, I don't think my job is to talk in universities. There are already scholars who study Islam. This is their job. Mine is to speak to the general public about the discoveries of the scholars. What I've put in my book is nothing but the discoveries of scholars.
Was right.
I'm
Right.
only doing a sort of journalist job or detective. I'm not inventing stuff. I'm analyzing, compiling, and speaking to the general public.
Yeah.
But I have already been invited in universities in France. Yeah, it was interesting. But I'm not here to replace scholars. They have to do this, and they are doing it. I am taking parts. That's a big word, but I am attending for example, the INARA conferences in Germany, and there are many critical scholars there who are very open to they are about to discover what I have written in The Great Secret of Islam, because everything I have written is based on their work.
So doesn't that tell us, though, that the academic world is slowly shifting? The inquiry is starting to expand. Curiosity is growing, and it's becoming more mainstream, more public, rather than just academic. I mean, 20 years ago, this was purely something by apologists who were academics. And now it's everyone in the street is talking about it. People on YouTube, on TikTok. It's your thoughts, Usama?
Well, I have a problem in my computer. I don't know if you realize that or not. Did I share something with you on the bottom down there?
No. Just try sharing again.
I'm trying it, but it's not working. I maybe have.
By the way,
yeah.
Okay, so just stop. So on the bottom, you'll see the share screen option or the present.
It's not working, brother. Somehow it's not working on my computer.
So try again. So on the bottom, click present.
I'm gonna go out and I'm coming back. I'm going out and coming back.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, let me just share my screen. So Odon, by the way, I've just got these. I'll just show this. These are questions that I have for the next hour, because I have family staying over. So yeah, these are some questions. In what ways the cultural and historical contexts? Welcome back, Usama.
Thank you.
By the way, for the next hour, I've just got there were 5 questions that I should have shared with you beforehand, but I thought of these rather late. I'll just go from 2 to 4 because we've already done number 1, and we've covered aspects of these already. In what ways do cultural and historical contexts influence the interpretation of Islamic texts, including the Quran, that may or may not be relevant to you guys? Can you discuss the role of oral tradition in the preservation and transmission? I mean, and also always in context of how is this versus the sin, the standard narrative versus historical evidence, right? And then from Usama's perspective, working within the sin, and from your perspective, Odon, we tend to, and mine as well, we tend to work within, but also outside of, from a strictly academic, evidence-based point of view. How do modern scholarship, we've already covered this, and what are the implications of reevaluating the origins of Islam, right? Because obviously Muslims are very affected by this, and I think in Usama's case, he said we need to evangelize, we need to cushion their landing if we reveal the lie. And then, of course, one question that did come up: what about the current bin Salman in Saudi? What changes is he making with the hadiths and what impact will that have? I mean, that's an interesting question, because is he really serious? Is that just PR? Is it going to be substantive? Is it, it's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Saudi king and his movement to moderate Islam. By the way, it's not just him. There are plenty. Sisi in Egypt is trying to do the same thing, and that's our president in Egypt. Many Muslims in the West who are they are the one who literally trying to create a new picture of Islam, a new code for Islam, a new interpretation for the Quran. And I'm sorry to say that we should never allow any of this to happen. As a matter of fact, if you have some information about the real Islam, the Islam which we have lived in the last 1400 years, you need to hold on to it, because soon you'll have a brand new propaganda Islam spread all over the world. You cannot tell me that the law was given and it was practiced in the world for over 1,000 years, and millions of people were killed, Muslims and, of course, others were larger number non-Muslim were killed because of these laws, because of this teaching. And today you just come up and wipe it out, and everything will be cool, everything will be great. That is not right. That's not fair. That is not a true understanding to the ideology of Islam and the practice which Muslims have lived for the last 1400 years. Add to that, what happened? What happened if we say we're going to remove all the savage teaching from the Quran and all the savage and hateful teaching of the Hadith, and we're going to come up with this brand new good Islam for the next 50 years or the next 100 years? I'm not going to say 50 years. It's from now on. And then 100 years from now, we have true Reformation in Islam. You see, these people, sadly, some of the liberals among the Christians are in agreement with them to say, you see, the church has been reformed. They don't say, they say Christianity has been reformed in the 15th century with Martin Luther and others. Excuse me. Martin Luther did not reform Christianity. He reformed the church by going back to the Bible. And he is emphasizing his teaching to say sola scriptura, which means the Bible alone. You cannot add to it, because that's where we have a problem in the early days, in the dark years of Christianity. So now, if we allow the king of Saudi or the president of Egypt or some people all over the West to moderate Islam and come up with this new beautiful Islam, which we're not going to practice these verses, we're going to ignore these hadiths, and say 100 years from now, lots of Americans, lots of Europeans believe in that good, beautiful Islam. And then we have true Reformation, which means 100 years from now,
the Salafis come back.
Some Muslims say, excuse me, we need to go back to the Quran. We need to go back to the true teaching of Muhammad in the Hadith. Here's what Allah said. This was corruption took place 100 years ago. Now you cannot fix the problem. Why? Because now you have the majority of the people will come up in unity to say, okay, we'll go back to Islam. We'll have Reformation. Moderate Islam will never last, but for short years. And if we let it live these short years, it will be the destruction of the West. For Jews, Christians, and atheists, and anybody else who does not believe in Islam. It will be like the first 13 years, according to what they taught me in Egypt, which could be now false because of all the new historical works and the work of Brother Odin and other people, that in the first 13 years, Islam was beautiful. Muhammad never killed anybody. There was no jihad. And it's true. You look at the verses of the Quran. None of the Mecca chapters have any verse they kill or shed blood or behead. And guess what happened after that? We got the savage Islam. Imagine if we allow this to be repeated, not in the distance of the city of Mecca, but in the distance of planet Earth, which means it's going to be a problem without fixing. You cannot return from it. So I hope and I pray that that movement will not influence the true intelligence, the godly Christians, and all the people who care about not allowing that sugarcoating, because you can always sugarcoat anything, but as you rub on it, the sugar will be gone, and then you get to the bitterness of it again. I hope you guys.
No, I think it's a Trojan horse.
It is,
because it simply presents a false face, and everyone goes, "Well, Islam is nice. That's fine. Let's have it in here." And then eventually someone rips off the face mask, and then the true Islam comes out, and then you've got this psychopath in your living room. What do? You know, the elephant's now in the house. You know, it's a problem. So I think, yeah, and it goes against as you say, the written doctrine. It goes against the written word of Islam, and so yeah, we should expose it for what it is, as a political system, as a theocratic, political system, and with a set of laws, and we can read those laws and see how barbaric and primitive they are. Yep.
And Lord, we have to stop it as it comes word for word. When they inverted the word Islamist, excuse me, what is Islamist?
Yep.
Oh, these are the radical Muslims. You mean Allah is Islamist? You mean Muhammad was Islamist? You mean the first successor were Islamist? I mean the Muslims the last 14 years were Islamist? If you let it go, you're going to get a man like Zudi Jasser, who's running as a congressman right now in Arizona as a Republican, who would be a wonderful Muslim who believe in moderate Islam, because these are the Islamists. These are not the real Muslims. No, we do not have Christian Islamist or Jewish Islamist. Whatever liturgy add to the word to make up a new name for a group, we need to stop it on the spot. Somebody come up with a word, expose it, and say that's not true, and end it. We end it there on the spot.
Odon, any thoughts before we go on?
Yeah, I agree. The dichotomy, the distinction between Muslims and Islamists a trick, which is designed to make people believe that there could be an Islam without submission, without violence, and that submission and violence are only due to wrong interpretations from Islamists. But it is not the case. The core of Islam is this idea I told you about, an idea that brings about destruction, violence, submission, the very idea that there are people that God has elected and he has made them superior to others. This idea is the legitimation for violence against the others. The idea that there are two mankind's, the Muslim one and the non-Muslim ones, is the basis for violence. And I agree that Islam is in urgent need of reformation. It has to tackle not the Hadith, not the Quran, but this idea. It has to tackle the idea that Muslims and infidels are not alike. It has to tackle this false concept that God has created two mankind's. We are one. We are only one mankind. There is only one human nature. Muslims are not different from infidels. And
you know something, Odon, you just made me think. People talk about Israel and they speak of Zionism and they speak of apartheid Israel. And as someone who grew up under apartheid in South Africa, that is such a false dichotomy that they create there. Because if you look at Israel has what, 2.1 million Arabs, Muslims living there, and they are allowed to participate in every aspect of society, including government, the legal system, and so on. Whereas you go to a Muslim country, like even the UAE, which is fantastic. I lived there for 11 years. I can't become a member of parliament. I can't even become a citizen unless I'm a billionaire, I can buy my way in there. But there are things that you simply, absolutely, positively cannot do. You simply do not have equal rights under the Sharia. You're a kafir. You're of a lower status. So Islam is an apartheid system. It creates a clear dichotomy between the non-Muslim and the Muslim. We are seen as inferior. We are seen as dirty. Now, I know lots of people are going to go, well, Lloyd, but the Talmud. And like most of you, in fact, you haven't read the Talmud. I've read the Talmud. I spent months reading it. And this is for the broader internet out there. You're going to go, yeah, you read someone else's paraphrasing of their opinion of the Talmud. That's it. So, yeah, but I mean, Islam is an apartheid-based system.
Yeah.
Can I elaborate on this?
Sure.
About Israel and Zionism, I just want to point that Israel is not an homogeneous society. All Jews within Israel are not alike. There are some hardcore Zionists, and there are others who might be religious or not. And I also want to point out that when you look at Islam, at an early Islam, actually, it emerged from a sort of Zionism. It emerged from an alliance between Jews who wanted to rebuild the temple and Christians who became their allies. And so we have to take this into consideration. There are many people nowadays, Zionists and Christians alike, who wants to rebuild the temple. They should think of the consequences. It has already been made in history. The third temple has been rebuilt around 640 by an alliance of Jews and Christian Arabs. And it led to the formation of Islam. Is this what we want for today?
No.
Yep.
Yeah.
6 things Muslims say about Islam and why we have misunderstood Islam or why we practice the wrong Islam in the West. First of all, the people who are doing these evil things are poor, when in reality, most of them are rich. Talk about the radicals or extremists or fundamentals. I call them true Muslim believers as Allah called them and Muhammad calls them and they call themselves. Second one is they are people who misunderstood the Quran. No, the Quran is very clear. The interpretation is very clear. There's no way you can misunderstand the Quran. The second one I'd love to say, oh, they are uneducated. Most of them are actually, in Egypt, to be a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to be in college. You don't have high school kids to make a member in the Muslim Brotherhood. So they're very educated.
Yeah, most of these terrorists are actually middle class, educated people in often upper middle class. They're not
Yeah.
of the lowest strata. Yeah.
Sure. That's a fact. We're talking about fact. But here's the fiction. Here's the fact about their excuse in the West. They're mentally ill. I do not know if any Muslim would be happy to someone say Muhammad was mentally ill or Allah is mentally ill. I mean, who will respect anybody say Muhammad was mentally ill? All the other things, it's culture. It's
No,
culture.
but also, Sama, if you read the Sharia, it states explicitly that to engage in these doctrines like jihad, you must be mentally fit. You may
Sure.
not be mentally unwell. It actually states you must be mentally perfectly sound, and you must willingly, consciously decide, I am now going to go and become a jihadi.
Sure, and not just become jihad. If you practice all the things of Islam, if you're going to bring some people to testify about some woman commit adultery, they have to be mentally good. You don't get crazy people to testify about a lady commit adultery and she did not. But the last one, which I like the most, it is politics. Excuse me, over 80% of Islam is politics. Are you trying to tell me Islam have nothing to do with politics? So, I mean, we just have to be educated about these propaganda or fabrication excuse the Muslim in the West, which the liberals are happy to have because they're willing to hold hand with the Muslim no matter what, and expose it one by one as they show up on the surface. You cannot let them accomplish an agenda for the destruction of the West because of us being naive or being kind or whatever word you want to put. No, expose the falsehood as it comes, one by one. What if they make it in a title or they make it in a excuse, whatever? Just expose it as it comes.
Right. On that point, you speak of falsehood. For both of you, many people learn about Islam through their politicians. And these politicians are informed by their advisors, and their advisors gain it from academia. And academics seem to be willfully negligent. They seem to be uninformed, misinformed, propagandized, funded by Qatar. I mean, we need to understand that Qatar and Saudi and other countries are spending literally billions of dollars. In the last decade, they've spent billions of dollars bribing, let's use the word bribing, these universities to accept their particular points of view. And they've greased those wheels very, very well. And I've seen so many academics that, the Quran, well, actually, there's no evidence for this, there's no evidence for that. However, actually, the Quranic story is 100% true. You're like, hold on, you just presented a lot of evidence that proves that the story is false. And then your conclusion is that it's perfectly legit. And so I see academics who are clearly putting all the pieces together, but somehow fail to draw that critical conclusion for good reason. As you say, they will find that their book will be stapled to their chest with a knife, as you said, Osama, very accurately. And I mean, so we've had our understanding. If I go back to the 16, 17, 1800s, you find that Western academics were saying this Islam is fiction. It's a myth. It's a concoction. Clearly, it's garbage. And then you come to the 21st century and it's like, oh man, this is amazing. Muhammad was born in the full light of history and blah, blah, blah. They've been shaping our understanding. How do we deal with that? I mean, we are the academics now. We're the ones. How do we change this? How do we fight this? And how do we get truth out of academia?
Are we supposed to go for 2 hours with that point, or how much time do we have for that point?
Well, I don't want to go for more than 2 hours, as I say. So we've got like 40 minutes, and I've got 2 questions left.
My world.
So please take 10 minutes. I'll just sit here quietly and listen, and we can go to Well, you guys
okay.
Just discuss.
No, let me give you my quick 5-minute worth of talk here.
Take 10.
No. You see, here we go. The Quran 210 years ago, and the Quran in September 11. Imagine with me, I'm going to give you a 2 scenario with our politicians in America 210 years ago and just 24 years ago. There was a Quran read by a man by the name Thomas Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2 volumes. It's actually right now exists in his library. And when Thomas Jefferson heard about what the Muslims are doing for our ships and our people who are coming from Europe to America, as they go between Morocco and Spain, there's an area there called Jabal Tariq. It's a small area where the ships go through it. And somehow the good Muslims used to attack these ships, killing the men, raping the women, taking the goods. Thomas Jefferson did not like it. They told him, Mr. President, that is what the Muslims do. Who are the Muslims? Oh, those are the people who believe in Muhammad, who believe in the Quran. What is the Quran? It is their holy book. Can I read it? Yes, sure you can, Mr. President. And he read it. And he went in war for 5 years. 210 years ago, America was a brand new baby country. We created the Navy for that war. If it was not for that war, we would not have the Navy in America. And he literally wiped out Morocco, Algeria, and Libya and Tunis, 4 countries. But he obviously discovered, what you're going to hear from me, you're not going to hear from other people because they're not sincere. He discovers that he opened a bag of worm he could not handle. Why? Because at the time, you have to keep going. You're going to go to Egypt, you're going to go to Sudan, you're going to go to Saudi Arabia. I mean, America is a baby country. That 5 years have put us financially in struggle, and we have been a big mess. So he closed the lid, and he did exactly what America used to do before he started the war. We continued to give them the money. We were supposed to be giving the money to make peace with them. The Muslims were taking it as jizya. We're giving it as a foreign aid. $1 million, ladies and gentlemen, 210 years ago is equal to 1/8 of the income of America. Imagine they collected 8 million, you lose 1/8 million to help these Muslim countries. But at least Thomas Jefferson read the Quran and understood what's in it. So he did what's right. He didn't finish it, but he did what's right. Now we go to September 11. As a matter of fact, by the way, that is the same 2 copies of the Quran which Keith Ellison, the 5th District Congressman in Minnesota, swear on to office. Imagine with me, the same copy, the same paper. It's not a copy like it. It's the same book. A president read, and he went in war with 5 Muslim countries, or a man put his hand on to swear to the office of congressman. And Keith Ellison lied, and he told the American people that Thomas Jefferson believed there is wisdom in that Quran. But let's move on to September 11. Mr. George W. Bush, as you said, Lloyd, George W. Bush met with these advisors, the Muslims. Actually, they are the Muslim Brotherhood. I got the video. I can share the video with you so you can see it yourself. And they stood behind him in Muhajirun Mosque, the mosque of immigrants. 4 days after September 11, not 4 months, not 4 weeks, 4 days after September 11. Here it is. He's Keith Ellison on the 2 copies of the Quran with Nancy Pelosi. She was so happy to make him swear into office. By the way, Quran chapter 2, verse 225, which teach it's okay to lie when you give an oath. Imagine with me, a congressman swear on the Quran, which teach it's okay to lie when you give an oath. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. We must be very smart in America, or maybe very stupid, but that's okay. Now, Mr. Bush bragged about the Quran 7 years before Obama came to power. He called the Quran holy. He called the Quran peaceful. He called Islam loving. He called the Muslim Brotherhood behind him in that mosque wonderful people, and he bragged about them. What happened? Mr. Bush did not bother to read the Quran. That is the difference. Bush did not read the Quran. Yes, here it is. That is exactly the picture. Look at Nahar Awad. Click on that one, brother. Click on that one. Nahar Awad, the head of care standing behind Bush and the rest of the Muslim Brotherhood. But what I'm saying is, if we read the Quran, we'll figure out the truth for ourselves. If Muslims read the Quran, not with these Islamic glasses, remember, we don't need these black glasses. You need glass you can see through it. If you read the Quran, you'll figure out what we're teaching here today is true. But if you choose not to read it, you bring problem to yourself and to all those who are around you. It is sad. It is sad. My people, my favorite verse in the Bible, Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Muslims are destroying themselves for lack of knowledge. And I'm not. We can do that in another topic. It's a very good topic for a good 2-3 hour by itself. So I will stop here.
Well, thank you, TJ Bowman. Much appreciated. And guys, if you do like the channel, please like, share, subscribe, all of those YouTube things. And of course, we did post the links to Usama's books as well as to Odon's new book. Please support them as well. Go get their books, download the books as well. And yeah, if you do like what I'm doing on the channel, please do support it. It really does go a long way. Much appreciated for all of those who have, like TJ. And he says, I'm a cradle Catholic. Islam is my favorite religion. Whenever I'm feeling down, I look up my favorites like Lloyd and get a laugh, and I'm thankful I was born what I was. Yeah, Islam. Thank heavens we're not Muslims. But yeah, I guess we also have to do this for the sake of converting those Muslims. Odon, over to you. Your word on that. Odon, you're not hearing you. Are you muted, Odon? Are you muted?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was some noise in the street. I'm unmuted. Yeah, I was saying that I was jumping on what Usama said about Jefferson and the Americans trying to end piratery, the way the barbarians, as we called them, used to take slaves and make razzias in Mediterranean Europe. This is why the French went to Algeria in 1830. So a few years after. And this is actually why we as French went to Algeria, to end the slavery. And this is something I wanted to highlight. Lloyd, in your question, there was something about the historical context. How did the historical context influence the interpretation of the Quran and so on? The historical context changed in the 18th and 19th century because the West imposed its views on the dignity of men and the ban on slavery. And because of this, most Muslim countries, almost every Muslim country, has abolished slavery. And this has given room for some dreamers, Muslims dreamers and non-Muslim dreamers, that there could be a reformation. Because, for example, look at this, we have abolished slavery. But look also at what happened when ISIS took power. They re-established slavery. Look also at what is happening in Saudi Arabia or in other countries. There is slavery. There is still slavery. It's not a public thing, but it still exists because it is written in the Quran, because it is among the teachings of the Sharia law, and because of this, it's very, very hard to reform Islam. Islam is caught in a trap, a sort of trap. In order to achieve reformation, it has to change its foundational text, its sacred text. It has to engage the very figure of Muhammad, and also it has to sort of edit the Quran, and in doing so, it will make Islam collapse. And should Islam not engage in such a reformation, Islam will also collapse. You see the trap here. The trap for people like Al-Sisi in Egypt or Prince bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. They know they are trapped. They are trying to buy some time. I think bin Salman knows that Islam is a forgery. He knows about the groundworks that were done in Mecca. He knows that nothing was found there that predates Islam. He knows it's false, but he he uses Islam as a tool for power. And Usama, you were talking about George W. Bush. And also thereafter, you talk about Obama. When you look at what Obama did with the Arab Springs and so on, when you look at the events that took place in the Middle East, you realize that Islam was used as a tool for power. And here we have something that has changed. You see, in Islam's history, Islam was used by Muslim rulers, as a way to legitimize their own rule. But nowadays, Islam is being manipulated and used by others, by higher powers, powers that want to exert global control. And they use Islam, they use the fanatics to wage their wars and to control almost 20% of the world population. And this is what Islam is. Islam is force. Islam is a tool for domination on populations.
Well, it's a disruptive force. I mean, they're injecting it into Western societies, and it causes friction. It creates distrust. It creates a burden, a financial burden, and it undermines Western society. And it is really a corrosive ideology, at least in the West. And I've lived for many years in the Middle East. I've traveled extensively, and it is dysfunctional wherever you go, with the exception perhaps of the UAE. Although there are issues in the UAE as well that are very well, kept under the rug kind of thing. But there are issues. Just a question.
Those Arab states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, they only exist and they only seem.
Western know-how created them. Really, at the end of the day, sustains them.
Yeah, it's only because of the money of the rest of the world, because we are buying them gas and oil. It's only because of this. There was my brother was in the military. He went to the UAE and had discussions and friends there, and one of them told him a sort of motto that the UAE upper class has. It's something like my great-grandfather was a camel herder. My grandfather found oil. My father had an oil company. I work in the oil company. My son will be a camel herder. Because when the oil depletes, what will there be left? What power? What actual? What have they built with all this money? How will they keep on with the big skyscrapers and the luxury and
well, they do need Western know-how, Western skills, Western people to keep a lot of it running.
They're not making anything besides selling oil. When the oil is gone, nothing is left for them to live for.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah.
In Saudi Arabia, for example, when they needed these huge desalination plants to make water for Mecca, they went to the West. They asked Western companies to build those huge factories and those huge desalination plants. They could not make them themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Here in France, we have a quantity of Arab and Muslim rulers who come to get treatments, medical care here in France, because they cannot have it at home.
Yeah,
that's the thing. But and they do all sorts of things.
Yeah. I was going to say thank you, Crusader General. Much appreciated. Thank you for your kindness. And he says, buy Usama's excellent book, The Generous Quran. And yes, Please look up both of these fine authors on YouTube. Today was a little bit of an experimental idea in that we've got different perspectives, the historical, critical perspective, and then, of course, working within the standard narrative. And how do we marry these two perspectives, and how do we approach Muslims from both of these? And it's interesting that each of us has a something, a contribution to make in terms of apologetics, in terms of polemics. And so I have one more question that I'd love to tackle, but there's also something else on my list of 5 questions. But one other thing, Muslims sadly make the most obvious bloopers. They say things that are so blatantly untrue, like Jesus was a Muslim, when it's quite obvious he was a Jew, for instance. And they'll just persist with this, right? They'll just throw it out there. But for instance, they'll say the Quran is written in Arabic because Allah speaks Arabic. Adam was an Arab. David was an Arab. David was a Muslim. Jesus was a Muslim. Abraham was a Muslim. And they all spoke Arabic. And like, okay, so Arabic was the first language, and the oldest manuscripts in the world of any kind are all in Arabic, I assume. I could be wrong on that point. Maybe you guys will point me right here. Usama, over to you then.
I'm just telling you. I was going to tell you that's a false information, but go ahead, give me a question first.
Well, on this point, I mean, they say things like this. You're like, it's so obviously untrue. But
let me put it this way. I'm going to go to Al-Tabari interpretation to Quran chapter. Quran, I'm going to give you right now to prove to you that they're wrong. Here we go. Here's Quran. I'm going to go to chapter 16, the book of the bee, and I'm going to go to verse 26. I mean, I can give you hundreds of examples, but I'm going to give you just one example. Quran chapter 26. Listen to what Al-Tabari said. It is Al-Tabari. I'm sorry, I cannot share my computer with you, but I'll do it next time.
Try again. Let's see. Hopefully, we can make it work.
No, I'm just going to read. If Muslim want me, I can copy and paste and give it to them later. But it says here.
I can try and bring it up.
Do you have Al-Tabari Arabic translation?
No, so fine.
That's okay. That's what I'm going to say. Listen to this. Here's what happened. It's a funny story. We can maybe make our people laugh here. They did not know who is the person who built the tower to go up to Allah in the Tower of Babel. So they said he is Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, or maybe he was Nimrod in the Bible, or maybe some of this. No big deal. Look how he did it. Look how he come up with the idea. Nimrod have 2 baby eagles, and he fed them, good food, and they became so big. And then he ties them both to a box of wood, or like a ship, a small ship. And he got a long stick of wood, and he put the meat in it. After he made these 2 eagles very hungry, and he stick it up there, and they start flying, and they want to get to the meat. They start flying to get to the meat, and he kept going up to get to Allah in heaven. To the point that when you get too high, you look down, you see the mountain look like small ants. Anyway, he came down because he could not do it. So he decided to build a tower. And then he built that big tower in Babel. And after he built it, Allah causes the roof of the tower to fall on them. And because of the fear, listen carefully, and because of the fear of what happened here, the building fell on top of them, they could not speak the same language. So they spoke, listen to this, I'm going to give it to you. Because of the fear, يومئذ من الفزع, because of the fear on that day, فتكلموا ب73 لسان, so spoke 73 tongues. فلذلك سمي بابل. That's why that place was called Babel. وإنما كان لسان الناس من قبل ذلك بالسريانية. But the tongue of all the people before that day was Syriani, no Arabic. Thank you. That is just to prove to you this propaganda. But you see what the story here? We are going to the great Muslim scholar Al-Tabari to understand Quran chapter 16, verse 26, which his story it is you can tell to little children, like maybe cartoon, Tom and Jerry, Daffy Duck, and all this wonderful character. But somehow Muslim believe he's a scholar. I call him Damar, but the Muslim calls him a scholar, which is okay, because without him, you couldn't understand what the verse said. And now we know that the people spoke the Arabic language. Excuse me. If Al-Tabari says they spoke Syriani, how you can tell me speaking Arabic? The 2 different languages. But more important than that, everything in Islam speaks. Everything. The mountains speak. The earth speak. The rivers speak. Remember when Allah put Adam and Eve on the earth? Actually, before Allah created them, the earth said, "Oh Allah, will you put on my back people who will commit sin and commit crime and commit murder?" By the way, that's why Allah put the mountain to shut up the earth, or maybe stop the earth from moving. I mean, you guys don't understand. The more you read in the Quran and the interpretation of the Quran, you find the mini comedy. Adam was a Muslim, and that is a problem. Yes, indeed, Jesus is a Muslim in Islam. David was a Muslim in Islam. Everybody is a Muslim in Islam. And I tell you why. After Allah created Adam, and I'm going to make it short and sweet, Adam looked, he was walking out in the garden, which is heaven, by the way, not on earth, and he saw written in the sky in words and letter of lights, there is no God except Allah, and Muhammad is a messenger of Allah. So Adam met with Allah, and he said, "Oh Allah." He said, "Yes." He
Who's
said,
Muhammad?
I know that you are this only God, it's you. But who is that Muhammad? You know what Allah said to Adam? "Oh Adam, because of Muhammad, I created you. Not because of Isa, not because of Moses, not because of Abraham, because of Muhammad, I created you." Adam became a Muslim. Adam is the first man who said, "Assalamu alaikum." Imagine, he told the angel, "Assalamu alaikum." And the angel said, "Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh." To make the long story short, since Adam is the first man and he was Muslim, therefore every man and every woman is born from Adam are Muslim. As a matter of fact, Muslims believe if you leave your children alone, you don't teach them anything about Christianity or Judaism or whatever, they will grow up to Muslim. And when somebody convert to Islam, they say they revert to Islam. Muhammad prayed with all the prophets. I'm going to say this one quickly here. Muhammad prayed with all the prophets in Jerusalem, the Muslim prayer in the Arabic language. So they're all Muslims. So don't believe anything besides that. All right, Brother Lloyd, go ahead.
So wow, that explains the origin of the Sirah story, where Muhammad is the first creation of Allah. Allah takes a piece of himself and forms Muhammad, and he takes small pieces of Muhammad and makes Adam, he makes Abraham, he makes Moses, he makes Jesus. Out of the prophets are made out of a piece of Muhammad, and so the essence of Muhammad is the soul of Adam, the soul of David, the soul of, wow, I did not know that.
Are you ready? Are you ready to say the Shahada right now? Can you repeat after me? Come on. Say the Shahada.
I'll do the Shah na na. Good night, sweetheart.
Maybe you're gonna listen, brother. You want to stay in for the
remember the songs and the Shah na na? I'll do that.
You're not taking me seriously, brother. Odin, would you like to say the Shahada with me right now?
No. It's not my stuff.
What is
I'm
wrong?
Sorry, very sorry, Usama.
What is wrong with you
right now, Usama? But we can talk.
You mean I wasted 2 hours of my life? That's okay.
So wow. Okay, I have one last question because as I said I have family and I need to get back to family. But thank you. Wow. Odon, any comment on what Usama said before we get to the last question? Then I'll give you guys time to.
It's an illustration of what I explained in the presentation about the fabrication of the Islamic narrative. At-Tabari didn't know anything about the Quran. He made up stories to explain the things based on former stories that he had. But that's the thing. It's exactly the same as what I was pointing at with François Desroches and his study of the ancient manuscripts and the copyists who didn't know what they were copying. And it's still the same nowadays. This is what is really awkward and funny with Islam, almost funny. When you look at Muslim apologists nowadays, they have the same attitude. They do the same as At-Tabari. They invent stories to explain the Quran because they do not understand the text. They do not understand it, and they make stories on the fly. I have had discussions with Muslims about the story, for example, of Mary being the sister of Aaron. You know the story in the Quran, and they invented stories to explain it in so that it would not endanger Islam. That's the the principle
Lies
here.
upon lies upon lies.
They did lies upon lies upon lies,
Yeah. Mhm.
so that it would fit the Islamic narrative and it would not endanger Islam. This is what is really at stake here when we look at At-Tabari and all the others up to today. They make up stories so that they would have a sort of plausible explanation of the Quran, an explanation that is not plausible at all, but it's all right with them. And this way they think that they sort of save Islam. They have saved what they believe is their only reason to live.
Yeah, so guys, we have 10 minutes. I need to finish with 8 minutes. So I'll give you guys like 4 minutes each. And Usama, we did discuss that we would hopefully we can have more discussions. You said something that is very close to your heart right now is the idea of Muslims converting to atheism rather than Christianity, and also disliking Christianity because they've received a false version of it from the Islamic background. From people who are teaching them false Islam and then teaching them false versions of Christianity. And I mean, it would be great to have that discussion and then analyze atheism and then also, these Muslims and provide them with an alternative to say, look, this is why you should come to Christianity. This is why. So that would be something great to have that discussion with you. And then Odin, of course, you and I have another chat, I think in a week. I believe in a week we have, was it tomorrow perhaps? But I know we have another talk again soon. So guys, I will be back with my guest soon. And then, yes? Okay.
No, go on.
Last question. So you guys have like 3 minutes each. What are the implications of reevaluating the origins of Islam on what we call interfaith dialogue, right? Which sometimes is a real, not a very practical issue, but it's there. I mean, in terms of, we can think of it as maybe evangelism or and Muslim identity, because Muslim identity is very much bound up with Islam. I mean, yeah.
Brother Lloyd, you remind me of a friend of mine, Jim Schneider, on Crosstalk. I do programs with him. It's my station actually, which carry my daily radio program at 12:30. But when I do an interview with him on a Crosstalk, he always have like 10 pages of 50 question, and he want to answer them in 42 minutes. So here we go. 2.5 minutes.
Just 5.
5, my foot is not going to be enough to say hello. Anyway, but here's the deal: dialogue. It is a mystery of dialogue in interfaith dialogue in the West. Why we do not have any interfaith dialogue in Egypt, where I grew up there? Why there's no interfaith dialogue start by Christians? It always start by Muslims. It's Muslims are using the interfaith dialogue because they know in a dialogue, it's not a debate. It is they're going to lie and lie and lie, and you just have sit and listen to their lies. And if somebody stand up in the audience say that's a lie, that somebody will be removed from the meeting because that somebody is Islamophobe or hate monger person. So I've been in many interfaith meetings. As a matter of fact, we have 2 radio broadcasts where we talked about interfaith meeting. One of them is a famous Southern Baptist President, J.D. Greer, with Imam Omar Slimani. I destroyed that 1-hour dialogue in 40-some broadcasts. I took it 1 sentence at a time. The problem with the interfaith dialogue is this. You get a Muslim imam with a Jewish rabbi, with a Christian minister, with an atheist, somebody else. I mean, I'm amazed. How can Muslims sit with an atheist to have dialogue, interfaith dialogue? You mean you really believe that, or Buddhist? Now, if you ask the Jewish rabbi, sir, have you ever read the Quran? No. Have you ever studied the Sunnah of Muhammad? No. What do you know about Islam? Well, whatever that imam told me. Okay, good. Thank you so much. I'm glad to know that. Let's ask the preacher now, if it's a Catholic priest or a Baptist minister. Sir, have you ever read the Quran? No. Do you know anything about Islam? No. What do you know about Islam? Well, I read a book or 2 about Islam. Good. Mr. Imam, yes. Have you ever studied the Bible? Oh, I have 16 hours in the Old Testament survey, Hebrew and Aramaic, and I had 24 hours Greek and New Testament, this and that. I mean, the Muslim guy is scholar. He knows his Quran. He knows the Bible. He knows everything about everything. And the rest are sitting with him in this interfaith meeting are what I call stupid, useful idiots. We can say whatever you want to say, and we end from the meeting of 3, 4, 10 people holding hand and singing my favorite song, Kumbaya. Okay, this is like I love you. No, Barney, you love me. We're a happy family. The big Barney. No, you know
The
the song.
lion sleep. You could sing "The Lion Sleeps Tonight." That might be a good change.
I will sing it to you after the show. But anyway, so that is the interface meeting where Muslims can lie and say whatever they want to say. And now you got new complete picture of Islam. And I guarantee you that we exposed Dr. James White in another 40-some broadcast when he did interface with Imam Yasser Qadi here in Memphis, Tennessee. You can go, guys, listen to all these broadcasts. It's available in our archive in the Straightway Ministry website. I mean, you talk about 100 programs to talk about two different people who did interface meeting with Muslims. So what you get in the end, you get Muslims are converting to Christianity. No, will never be. Christians are interested in Islam. Yes, 100%. That's why Muslims are leading that movement of interface. I wish we can have interface movement like that in the Muslim world, because just trust me, that will be the destruction of Islam. Why? Because Muslims in Egypt cannot lie and say Islam is love. Love
So
my
what do
foot.
we need to do, Osama? So in 1 minute, what do we need to do?
It's very simple. Attend this interface meeting. Take your Quran with you. Let them say whatever they want to say. Get to the mic and ask a question by quoting the Quran and says, "Here's what Allah said." Do you have an answer for that? You can. One person can destroy an hour or 2 hours of interface meeting. That's what I always do. Yes, they're gonna kick you out of the meeting. That's fine. Be polite. Be bold. Say, "You said, but here's what Allah said. You said, but here's what Muhammad said," and end this propaganda on the spot.
Yeah. I once asked Muslims online, show me where Allah says to love the Christian, to love the Jew, to love your neighbor. And there was silence. So, but
They
that's
have their
really
way.
helpful. Odon?
They have their ways to answer those tricky questions. They would quote, "Do not kill the life that Allah has made sacred," for example. But to answer the former question about we're talking about ex-Muslims leaving Islam. I think they might be very interesting in the historical critical approach. Since they have left Islam, they might understand, and they can understand, what early Islam was about. And I had many ex-Muslim telling me how useful it was for them once they started to leave Islam, once they started to have doubts, and when they started to ask questions about the historicity of Islam, how useful it was to look at my videos, for example, or to read the researches about what really happened. But I have another point to make here. I would like to speak as a Christian for once, and also as a historian. When you study early Islam, you understand the deep nature of Islam, and you come to understand how Islam was so successful among Christians, how it spread among Christian countries. The whole of Northern Africa was Christian, for example. There were more than 600 bishops at its height, at its highest point. How come did all those people convert to Islam? It took centuries. It took many, many centuries. But in the end, they converted. And I think it's because Islam developed a narrative and a discourse that encompasses Christianity, or a false vision of Christianity. But they explain to Christians that they become fully Christian by becoming Muslims, because Jesus was a Muslim and so on. Yeah. And if we are to engage Islam and to engage in a real interface dialogue, we have to develop a discourse, a Christian discourse that encompasses Islam. I mean, a discourse that takes into account the Muslim expectations. What are their hopes? What does Islam give them? It gives them the hope that they will prevail in the end, that they will be part of God's plan to eradicate evil from us. And we, as Christians, we have an answer for this. We have an answer. We have an answer for the issue of evil. And we have to be able to talk to Muslims about our answer, how we, as Christians, we can cope with evil. We won't eradicate evil. It is not our job. But every one of us Christians can do something by being the light of the world. As Jesus said, you are the light of the world. By making good, something good. Love your neighbor as yourself, for example. And this is how mankind will be judged. This is what Paul said. Saints will judge the world. I don't know the exact quotation in English. It's my own translation on the fly. But this is the sort of discourse that we have to develop, a discourse that encompasses Islam, that encompasses the Muslim expectation. So not a discourse that is critical by saying Muhammad is a false prophet and so on, because it won't achieve much. It might change the views of some Muslims, but in the end, we won't have addressed the main issue, which is the core belief of Islam, which is that Muslims are part of a sort of a revolutionary plan to eradicate evil. They are the communists of the 7th century.
They command the right and forbid the wrong, the prime doctrine in Islam.
That's the thing. That's the thing. And we have to show them how we, as Christians, we will, in the end, prevail against evil through the second coming of Jesus and so on.
All right. Guys, it's sadly, I have family, so I have family commitments. I need to return to that. But we can obviously go, man, there's more questions and there's more answers to come. And I know, Usama, you look like you're chomping at the bit to throw in.
Hey, next time we need to start 2 hours earlier. That's all. No problem.
Okay, that's that's what when I look at Formula One, I was someone was saying, wow, these guys are going so fast. And I said, you know what? They wouldn't have to go so fast if they just left sooner. So yeah, I guess you're right.
Oh, no. It was an honor for me to meet with you and Brother Odin again. And God bless you both. It is my heart and my desire, my prayer for people who watch this broadcast to share it with others. Hopefully, we can reach up to new audience, because this is our job. We just read, love your neighbor as yourself. Are you a believer? Do you want your neighbor to become believer? How do you think they become believer if nobody told them? So it is very simple. You share that video. Hopefully next time we'll attack some other different point material. It's not going to be done in one show anyway. We have a bunch of shows, and we have enough time to cover plenty of material to answer these. Maybe in the future, if I don't know if you allow this or not, our dear Muslim friends, they can come up with questions, and we answer the question. We'll do our best.
Yeah. Guys, the audience loved you both. And the different perspectives. And there's an overlap. There's a difference. It gave a very wide coverage. And thank you very much, both. I'm really sad to end it, but I have to go. I've got, as I said, a family commitment. But thank you both for the privilege of having you on, and for honoring me by coming on the show. It was really fantastic discussion. Let's do this again soon. So I'll be in touch with you both. Odon, I know we're on again soon. Usama, we'll talk. We'll plan for the next one, a date. And I think, how do we deal with Muslims?
And before we go, we just let you know, Brother Lloyd, we forgive you and we love you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so guys, thank you. And thank you, wonderful audience. So guys, God bless, and we will all see you soon. Thank you very, very much.